Floods are the nation's most costly type of natural disaster, and Roseville's committed to wisely investing in order to ensure that our residents and businesses have low flood risk. Being a safe community protects, attracts, and keeps businesses and homeowners in our community. And I think it's the responsible thing to do. Okay, well, first of all, I just want to let you know, Roseville has 75 miles of creeks and 150 miles of creek shoreline. So we've got a lot of water running through this community. The city leadership back in the 1980s elected to create higher development standards since much of this shoreline has yet to be developed, or had yet to be developed at the time. Now no development is allowed within the city's floodplain, with the exception of some small infill areas in the older parts of our community. Developers deed floodplains to the city for management as open space. This is the side benefit, allowing multi-use trails to be built for residents in these areas. And some of the parks have also been built to act as flood detention basins. Since the 1986 and 1995 floods in Roseville, when higher standards for development in the floodplain went into effect, the development community has not pushed back much. But two of the main reasons for this are our floodplain boundaries are not much more stringent than FEMA's boundaries, and the overland release requirements may require building pads to be higher, but do not reduce the number of buildings that can be developed. So developers appreciate Roseville's efficient and predictable development process. They know there won't be costly delays and costly surprises down the road. This also helps when they go out to secure financing. So I guess you could say that Roseville has overcome the typical developer pushback against higher standards by streamlining the process and making it predictable. Civil engineers often use a 50-year lifespan for projects, and when Roseville was going through the process of establishing these regulations, they decided to use a 50-year time frame because that was kind of the standard. And these regulations were established in the 90s, early 90s, so it extends out to 2040. Okay, well, there's been $32 million invested to reduce our flood risk here in Roseville. $15.7 million of those dollars were provided by the City of Roseville. $13.8 million came from FEMA grants, and another $2.7 million came from our good neighbors in the railroad industry that are located here in Roseville. Projects that have been undertaken include stream channel improvements, construction of flood walls, levees, and stormwater bypass tunnels, physically elevating flood-prone homes, and purchasing flood-prone properties and converting them into open space. Roseville's been successful in managing our flood hazards and excelling in the community rating system due to our use of a portfolio approach. And what that means is we have a comprehensive response to each of the following areas: risk assessment, risk awareness and education, risk mitigation, risk reduction, a flood warning and response system, flood emergency response, and risk reduction facility maintenance. That's the overall package. $15.7 million came from the city general fund, out of the general operating fund. And what the city did was they planned ahead. They saved the money and then made these investments over a period of time in the aftermath of the 1986 and 1995 floods. Because of the nearness to the flood incidents, there was wide support by the community to make these improvements. We continue to receive resident support of our floodplain management efforts through the visible management of flood risk, using public outreach to showcase the regular use of our flood alert system and the benefits of our flood protection improvements during any significant storm event. We have stream water level gauges and rain gauges, combined with sophisticated flood forecasting software and NWS rain forecasts, which enable the city's emergency managers to predict when and where floods may occur and reassure the public when they will not occur. We also have a Placer alert system, which is a region-wide emergency notification system. Text and email alerts may be sent to anyone who signs up for this system. And although it's not been needed since 1995, city staff would also notify homeowners in person if flooding of a home is expected. The city also has an emergency management team consisting of members from every city department, which meet monthly to keep our preparedness current. And we also have a very robust communications team citywide that is well versed in emergency communications with multiple public communication channels. Well, Roseville emphasizes preparedness and communication. The public can monitor creek levels in real time by viewing stream gauges online on our website. The city also uses additional forms of communication like social media, email, direct mail, etc. to inform our residents. So having a multi-hazard mitigation plan is a great tool to help communities plan for resilience. The two historic floods were in February 1986 when 209 structures flooded in Roseville. And then January 1995 was more severe, 358 structures flooded. Now most of the homes that flooded in those floods were constructed prior to our floodplains being mapped. No structures built in Roseville since 1980 have flooded. In 1995, some homes in Roseville experienced 200-year flood event, so it was a big event. Only one Roseville Creek section has seen flood flows of that magnitude since then. Other creek sections have seen high waters up to a 50-year flood event. But since the 1995 flood, because of the infrastructure improvements we've made, they've worked flawlessly to prevent any additional flood damage. One neighborhood would have been flooded multiple times since 1995 had it not been for the city-funded flood control and floodplain management improvements here. It's an incentive for new residents and businesses to locate in Roseville because they're assured that their risk as far as flood damage is minimal. So it makes this community safe and attractive and a welcoming place for new residents, new businesses. Flood preparedness and floodplain management are not one-time investments. It can be expensive to properly maintain floodplains and open spaces. And with competition for general funds, there's pressure to downscale the level of service. Our goal is to provide a first-class community in terms of safety and amenities for this and future generations. We want to continue to attract residents who are looking for a high-quality community in which to live, work, raise their families, and retire. As floods are the nation's most costly natural hazard, flood hazard management and creating wide open spaces along our creeks helps meet this goal. People have very short memories, so after a flood event, it's important that you act quickly to make investments in flood protection while it's still a major concern of the residents. Do it while people are still thinking about it and it's top of mind. In other words, if you wait long, it won't be as important to the citizens as it was right after the event. First of all, there's an important statistic that I was provided. Nationwide, for every dollar invested in flood protection, $7 are saved in post-disaster rebuilding. So I think it's important for communities that are looking at this to learn from other communities' experiences. I would encourage them to reach out to Roseville staff to talk about what it is that we did and how we did it. And don't wait for something to happen before you act. First of all, I want to say, I'm on the city council now, but back in the 80s when we were having these flood events, the people at that time, the elected officials, the city staff, the residents, the development community came together. They realized we had a problem. They came together and they made this happen. I wasn't there then. And so the appreciation and the recognition and the credit needs to go to the folks that came before us. But it's important that we keep this top of mind because you never know when you can have another heavy rain. We live right along a lot of creeks. We live in a very wet area, and you always have to be prepared for for what might happen. And I appreciate and respect the work that the folks that came before us did, and appreciate the work that we continue to do as a city to protect our residents.